Fine.
Hello!
Yay! Hello! Welcome to Shooting the Shit. Marisha, do you want to do a hello?
No way. So promising. It's like fucking Blue Peter's just rocked up, and then we start talking about WAP and all this kind of stuff. It's so inappropriate.
It's children. It's a very devious kind of children's television. Hello. Anyway, welcome to Monday's Shooting the Shit. Today we are talking about raising girls and boys. So we were planning to talk about raising girls, but we actually missed the session on raising boys a few weeks ago. So we've rolled it all into one, and it's essentially raising children. So Hannah has the most children here. She's got 2 girls. I have got 1 boy, and Marisha has no children. You lucky cow. You very lucky cow. We were just saying before we came on that Aubrey, who Hannah is currently holding, although you can't really see her, spent the day vomiting, being sick, not sleeping, and having big poos. So every time we speak to her, she reminds us why we don't have any more children. So anyway, there we go. Raising kids. How do we raise feminist children in this day and age when there are so many influences coming at them from all different directions? How do we raise feminist children as mothers, and how do we ensure that the next generation is feminist as non-mothers? Those are the things we're going to talk about today, and we're going to touch on all sorts of different things. So first of all, Hannah, you've got most children. What do you think about raising feminist girls?
Well, I think I'm doing a really good job with Naya. So Naya is 8 and she's very feminist. And when something happens, she's able to identify it as being patriarchal and call it out. She already has that level of confidence, whether it happens at school or with a family or whatever. And one of my proudest moments was listening to Naya and my niece, who's 18 months younger, sitting in the car wondering why they weren't able to grow mustaches. And Naya said, it's because of the patriarchy.
Yeah. I mean, we have worked very hard. I've worked hard with Leon, and you've worked hard with Naya, and both of us, together on each other's children to make sure they are feminist. And Leon equally is very good at saying, well, that's a bit sexist, isn't it? But I do wonder sometimes if it's a bit of a, what's the word, like a Pavlovian response when you say to him, like, what's wrong with that, Leon? Patriarchy.
Maybe.
It's a kind of shut up, mother, I don't want to talk about this.
Yeah. Really, it's a socio-economic crisis.
Yeah. What do you think, Marisha? What do you think about how we raise feminist children? Do you think it's important?
I do, and I guess as you're talking, I'm kind of thinking, well, I obviously don't have the same kind of experiences as you guys, but is it that actually some things have changed in the world that not allow, that's the wrong word, but I can't think of another one, but allow that to happen a bit more, that it's a bit more, it's freer now to be able to do that, because I see it as a hugely generational thing, really, where people that are maybe 20 years older than me are very much in that kind of boys don't cry kind of scenario. You go out, you buy your own women's things, that's a term for everything, women's things, and that's it. So yeah, what do you think has changed, I guess, to kind of allow a bit more freedom in that kind of stuff?
I mean, it absolutely has become more acceptable to talk about it, hasn't it? I mean, Leon and I, so Leon's 10 and 11 in 2 weeks, and at his school, because of the COVID regulations, they've now got unisex toilets, and so the year 6 girls' toilets have sanitary product bins in them. And Leon was telling me that his friends didn't know what they were for and didn't know what tampons were for, and Leon does, because we've always had those conversations about what periods are and what tampons are, so he's quite au fait with it. So I was a bit surprised at that, because I thought that periods and things like that were much more talked about generally by society, but probably because we have those conversations in our house. But I do think generally it's become, we're allowed to talk about this stuff a lot more than I think our parents' generation ever were, weren't we? Were you raised feminist, Marisha?
That's a big old question. Not really, no.
Was it ever a conversation in your household?
Yeah, it wasn't a conversation. I think it was more a case of, well, I say that, but I think it wasn't there were the male female role models as opposed to role models, but that kind of, you know, typical one does the cooking and one does the cleaning. But actually, it wasn't really like that, you know. So my dad would still cook. It wasn't like he'd come home and demand that dinner was on the table or anything along those lines. He was still capable and did do the other things as well, and vice versa. You know, and so whilst it was never really said, you know, but you know, it was like I had both parents taught me how to cook, you know, different things. And you know, they both taught me how to do the ironing, for example, and you know, they both thought each other was wrong. It was more that you know, it's that kind of thing. So yeah, it wasn't, you know, it didn't have a name and it didn't have words. It wasn't kind of this is it. It kind of happened a bit more naturally, I guess.
I think ours was the same. I think it was never, right, girls, today we're going to teach you how to be feminists. It was just our dad, I think, was the biggest advocate for women's rights and is still really passionate about it. And he always made it incredibly clear that we were no different because we were girls and we could always do just as well as the boys, if not
better. And he actively said that. He didn't just make it clear. He used to actively tell us that. Yeah,
and he still does.
Yeah,
he still brings us up and gives us the feminist pep talk. But I don't think he would call himself a feminist. I think if we said, you know, Dad, you're such a feminist, he'd be like, oh, blimey. I don't think
oh, blimey, I know.
I don't know if that was Scottish or Welsh or
nobody knows. So yeah, I think, but whereas now, I think in our social circle in particular, Rachel, we're a lot more keen to point out to the kids that's patriarchal, that's a feminist attitude. You know, we're giving it a name in the hope of empowering them, I suppose, and giving them the gumption to stand up for themselves when they are faced with something that either subjugates them or makes it so that, you know, it's kind of a toxic masculinity, which is like, we're all really mindful that that's what Leon's got to face as he grows up. So I think we are giving more voice to it, but I think we are in a minority. So, you know, if you just look at a supermarket at the toy section, I was in Morrison's when Naya was a kid, and there was a section that said boys' toys and girls' toys, and it had a sign saying boys and girls. And I was in Smith's toy shop for about 3 weeks on Saturday, and there were very clear gender distinctions down aisles. There were 2 aisles, and when you look down them, it was pink. And there was another one, and when you look down them, it was khaki. And Naya was kind of like wandering around both aisles, but very much kind of guided towards the pink aisles because it's just bombarded. So I think whilst...
Well, also, it's what her friends will be into. There's peer pressure amongst it as well, isn't it? Because that, you know, all the other girls will be like, oh, if you got this LOL doll or what have you. So that's why they get as well pressured into it, isn't it?
Precisely. And I think what I'm trying to do is give Naya the language to be able to challenge that and the reasoning skills to be able to acknowledge that that's happening. And even if she doesn't challenge it, just recognize that that's peer pressure, that's a patriarchal society, and that's not something that she necessarily has to subscribe to. And obviously Aubrey as well.
I mean, I feel sometimes like I'm fighting a losing battle, because I mean, when Leon was little, he had little baby Jack. He had his little doll and his changing bag that he used to carry around over his shoulder. And he had a pink trike, and his favourite colour was pink when he was
growing up.
All his he loved makeup and jewellery and dressing as a girl and all the rest of it. And that was fine. But, you know, I remember when I think it was when he had baby Jack, and my father-in-law went and bought him a toolkit, a little belt with some tools on it. And not real tools, you know, pretend ones, and a little tool bench, and it was actively, you know, to counteract this. Oh my God, we've got to turn this boy into a boy. And he liked running, jumping, climbing trees, putting on makeup when he gets up there, and he likes his railway track, and he likes playing Fortnite. But he does still like, you know, I mean, he's growing out of it a bit now, but he's always played dolls with Naya and played with Naya with her girls' things just as much as he's played with his boys' things. But then they go to school. And all of a sudden you are fighting that tide, like you say, of peer pressure and, oh, they've got to have the latest trend, and the latest trend is very gendered. Yeah. And so, you know, I do sometimes feel like we're fighting a losing battle on the toy front.
But I think it's not necessarily about steering them away from toys that are traditionally assigned to their gender. I think like Naya wants to play with makeup and dollies, and she absolutely loves that, but she'll also play with cars and train sets and stuff. And I think it's not about saying, no, you can't play with that, or don't you want this train set instead, Naya, or Leon, don't you want this little dolly instead? I think it's just, you know, there are no gendered toys. Like I saw a really funny flow diagram the other day. I think I told you this. I think I've said this on here before, where it said, is this toy for children? No, is this toy... Move on.
I think I remember. But it is a new thing, though, isn't it? And it's very much this whole gendered toy thing, because we didn't have this growing up. I mean, what did you play with, Marish, when you were little?
No, that's because I'm listening to you as well. I'm thinking, well, I played with toys, with girls, dolls, with, you know, cars, with whatever. And then I had a younger brother, you know, at 4. So is that what the influence is? Because actually you're around it anyway, you know, as a child. So therefore there wasn't that kind of distinction with that belongs to that and that belongs to that. So maybe that kind of made it so that it wasn't such a thing, you know. Would it be that when I was younger, if there was just me, would it just be there were girls' toys around and that I'd never be bought, you know, a toy car or anything along those lines? But I do have niece and nephew, nieces and nephews. They're all over the place. But anyway, I kind of, you know, in my head, you know, like my niece, she looks up to her dad, what he does as a job. You know, there's that kind of influence. So as the last presents I bought, they were like a pink toy kit, for example, that had tools in and things like that. Should it be pink? Probably not, but, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, it wasn't, you know, kind of, just didn't really think about it, you know.
No, I'm fairly sure we did. I mean, I do remember we had My Little Pony and we had Sylvanian Families. They were very girly toys. But then we just had like a post office. I mean, we played with that endlessly, that post office. And Leon's still got it. I found it in a box when I was doing his bedroom the other week. So, you know, things like that. And they weren't gendered. And I mean, up until the age of being about 4, my only real toys were valves, because my family was setting up a valve company. So any picture of me under the age of 4, it's just me playing with valves, because we just had loads of them in the garage. But, you know, that I don't remember. It was Lego and it was Connects and all the rest of it. And what's that word? Meccano. I don't remember it being so gendered, and we had a massive train set.
Don't you think it kind of is gone that way? Because I think that's the thing. It wasn't that, you know, Lego was Lego. You know, there wasn't Lego and blue sets of Lego.
They do gender Lego. Naya will only buy Lego Friends, which is all girls, like all girl bits of Lego, doing things like owning a bakery or doing a trampoline tournament or living in a great big house. Like, it just fucking horse shit. Why can't it just be Lego? Why does it have to be gendered Lego?
And this is part of the reason I think that we have to work so hard now. Because I mean, if you go into Naya's bedroom, it looks like a unicorn has exploded in it. Literally everything is pink and sparkly. And Leon's room now, Leon just had his bedroom painted last month because he wants a more grown-up teenage boy. And it's blue. It's blue and it's full of you know, gaming stuff and boy things. And there's still quite a lot. I've made him keep quite a lot of colour, but he wanted to get rid of baby things which bring colour. So it's, you know, they are now very gendered bedrooms. And I think that's part of the reason that we have to work so hard to battle this, because we've got to be constantly fighting against that narrative that comes in from outside that never used to be there.
But on the other hand, like, maybe it's okay that Naya likes pink and purple and Leon likes blue, as long as they know that there is an option for them to like something else. And if Naya wants her room to look like, you know, a fucking glitter bomb's gone off, and if Leon wants his room to look like it smells, then that's all fine, as long as they know that there's an alternative. And I think our kids do know. I don't know if other kids know, obviously, because I don't see other kids, but
yeah.
And I think sorry,
it's all right, go on, carry on, finish your point.
I think that comes with raising aspirations as well with girls and boys, and kind of showing the opportunities that are available to them as they grow older, that they know that if a girl wants to go into nursing or, you know, a traditionally female role, that's absolutely fine, but it's not all that's available to them. And the same with boys. And I think as long as we are making it clear at this age, then hopefully that message will track with them.
So I do want to come on to job roles, because obviously this is a Feminism in Business broadcast. But before we do, just in terms of
I always
want to say podcast, and it's not a podcast. It will be a podcast eventually, but for now it's a live. But anyway, let's not get into that argument again. But I think on the toy front, whilst we do have all these gender toys, I do think there are a lot more feminist toys that are available. So I've got a lot of godchildren and obviously nieces and stuff, and I do buy them an awful lot of feminist stuff. All of my godchildren for Christmas, whether they're boys or girls, get feminist Christmas presents. Like little one of my godchildren is, well, they're like 1, 2, 3, 4, that age. And last Christmas, they all got the feminist jigsaw book and the feminist wooden puzzle.
I wrapped up a load of Tampax and gave them as Christmas.
No, but
that's when they get to age 5 and 6.
Last year for Christmas, Rachel bought Naya a feminist colouring book. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's nice, dear. And then I was casually flicking through it one day, and it had colour in your favourite sex toy, like a double page spread of sex toys with the colouring.
I thought it was a feminist colouring book for kids, but it's a feminist colouring book for grown-ups. But she'll have it. Give it 10 years. She'll love it.
She can have it back. She can have it back.
Have you taken it off her?
I'm not taking it off her. I've just removed it and hidden it. I don't want to colour in a double-ended dildo, Rachel.
Anyway, so moving on to the other thing quickly, because there's so much we could talk about in this, but gendered clothing as well. This is such a big thing now, isn't it? And it's the same when you go into the supermarket and you get the pink and the blue in the toy aisle. You get exactly the same thing down the clothing aisles, and there's less for boys as well. This is what really annoys me. You go in and you look for boys stuff, and there's one row of boys clothing, and it's all blue or khaki, and then there's like 5 rows of girls clothing, and it's all pink and sparkly. And there's all that hoo-ha as well, isn't there, about, you know, boys pretty says I'm going to grow up to be an astronaut, and girls clothing says, like, you know, pretty
princess.
Yeah.
Not only that, but girls clothing, obviously I've been shopping for Naya for a long time now. Girls clothing is so sexualized, it's very difficult to find a girls clothing, especially now at Naya's age, that's not a mini version of a grown-up's clothes. Like, I was in H&M on Saturday, looked like shopping with her, and it was all leather jackets and ripped jeans and crop tops and stuff. And it's, to me, that's not super appropriate for an 8-year-old girl to be wearing. But then, am I sexualizing Naya by saying that's not appropriate because that makes her look like a grown woman? Which, if Naya wants to wear a crop top, who am I to tell her that that's too sexual for her, because then I'm part of the problem as well? It's a fucking minefield.
That is, yeah, and I must admit, you know, with Leon, I don't have that issue. You get chinos or jeans and long or short sleeve t-shirts, and that's it. So I don't have to worry about that at all with Leon. But you're right. Is it appropriate for us to say this is really sexualized clothing? But you see all the time, don't you? What was that one? Wasn't there a t-shirt that came out? Was it not Prime, H&M or something, that was like little slut or slut in the making or something? And it was banned. And you do think, like, is this really inappropriate, or are we being slightly perverse by putting those distinguishing features on it? What do you think, Rish?
I think this is where I kind of come into the space of, I think I'd really struggle with all of this kind of stuff if I had kids, you know, because that is just an absolute minefield. You know, how do you kind of manage that? Because I agree, you know, I would want my children to look like children. You know, I don't want them to be mini versions of me, but actually, then, you know, is there's something to be said for that. But, you know, like whilst you were all also talking earlier, I was thinking, well, you know, I could have also been called, you know, a geek, you know, because I can be a bit of a gamer, you know, that can fall into that kind of space. But on the flip side of that, there's also, oh, well, you know, female gamers, they're, you know, also sometimes they're sexualized as well, you know.
They're fetishized, aren't they?
They are really sexual. One of Leon was showing me his characters on Fortnite the other week, and one of the girls, I mean, she looks like Lara Croft. She's got big tits. She's wearing essentially a bikini and some sort of utility belt with tools on it, and that's Leon's favourite character. And I was like, why do you like her best, Leon? And he was like, oh, she's got the best powers. Yeah, we'll come back to that in a year or so. But again, it's back to this thing of these are the images that they have been about. You see it on Instagram, don't you? Where there's like mums and daughters who dressed in these matching outfits, and they're like in these little play suits and stuff. And you're like, why are you dressing your child like an adult? I'm exactly the same. I want my child to look age appropriate, not like a mini adult. It's very strange, isn't it?
Well, Aubrey's got dinosaurs today. She's rocking the dinosaur onesie.
Good done, well done. Annika's just put on about have we seen the poem Pink or Blue by Holly McNish? And I must say we love Holly.
I love Holly McNish.
We're big Holly McNish fans. But yeah, I think I have read that one. But basically anything Holly McNish turns out is amazing, and she does, because I think she became a mum about the same time that I did, or maybe a year after. She was like in between me. So quite a lot of her poetry is kind of tracked that life change and those battles, which are really, really real. You do feel like anyway, let's move on. So, talking about the influences that come at kids from all over the world and all over the internet and from school and everywhere, we've got to talk about porn.
Yeah.
What? I did not expect you to say that and freeze at the same time. That was absolutely perfect. All right.
There'll be no reaction on that one. But we do, you know, and I've said this multiple times to many people, but when we were growing up, you kind of knew about porn, but you just didn't have the opportunity to see it. It wasn't available. And I remember going down the Swan when I was probably about 15, and my friends had found a porno mag in the bushes in Astley Park, and they brought it down the pub, and it was like the most exciting thing that had happened for months. Like, we were all like, oh my god, a porno! And we spent all night looking at it and laughing at it and reenacting it.
This was last week. Whatever.
Yeah. God, how much porno must be in British bushes? Like, I mean, everybody has found porno.
How much porno is in your bush?
Not enough.
Anyway, I don't know if any of you have seen, what's her name? That woman did the TED Talk. She's in that Good Place thing. British woman.
Jamila Jamil.
Yeah. So Jamila Jamil did a TED Talk a few years ago now about talk to your children about porn or about sex, teach them about sex, because if you don't, they will find Pornhub, and that is where they will learn it from. And I definitely think this is something that we've got to, I always want to say, especially as the mother of a boy, but actually, obviously, we've got to speak to all our children about sex and be open and honest with them. And I remember once when Leon, he must have been, it was at school, so he was maybe 6, and him and his friend stumbled across some porn on the iPad. And when I say stumbled across, I mean I actively went looking for. And they found something quite disgusting, despite parental control things on it. And I had to then sit down and explain to them that this was not after I'd screamed and stopped shouting and stopped shaking. I then had to sit them down and talk to them about how it was not representative of how people had sex and all the rest of it. But that's an ongoing conversation we've had to have. But again, it's that fighting the tide of the influences that are being thrown at them for the internet. Because, you know, of course Leon's seen porn. It's so naive to think that he hasn't. And he's 10, he goes to primary school. Do you remember being in year 5 at primary school? They all have mobile phones. You know damn well that as soon as they get out of school, what they're looking at is porn. Of course it is.
Well, I legitimately didn't know half this stuff until like year 7 or 8.
Really?
We didn't have access though, did we? That's what's changed.
Yeah.
You know, it was top shelf. We knew it existed and we knew it was there, but we didn't know what it actually consisted of because it required a bit more, you know, effort to find a video, to put it into a recorder when no one was looking, or to be able to get that top shelf Mac. Whereas now it is there and it's so accessible. So yeah,
you just need someone with an older sibling, don't you? Oh no.
Exactly. Or you just need, you know, just to look for it and it's there. You know, it's not the cost association or anything with it anymore. So yeah, it's just a lot more accessible as well, you know, than it used to be in my head. So yeah, I didn't leave school with my, you know, mobile phone. I didn't even have a pager then. You know, porn on. Jesus Christ. None of these things.
But I mean, listen, you've got to be realistic about it. And I think it's really naive to assume that, you know, 10, 11, 12-year-old boys with access to the internet are not going to go looking for porn. And obviously, if the boys are looking at it, the girls are going to be looking at it. And if we don't have those conversations with them, back to that kind of hypersexuality that's going on with our kids, you know, that they can quite easily think that that's normal. You know, I mean, I was watching, and I keep track of what Leon does on his phone, but I watched like TikToks that his friends have done, and some of them have got Instagram accounts and stuff. And the stuff that they're putting out there, it's teetering on the edge. You know, these are 10 and 11-year-old girls, and they are doing quite, you know, on the edge things. So we've got to be open, haven't we?
Oh my God.
I was like, oh my God, I'm locking down the entire internet as soon as that's it. We're never getting out again.
Oh, this is the thing, right? I take the view that I would rather Leon see things when I'm there. So like I don't censor films, I don't censor music, you know, he listens to Cypress Hill and we watch 18 films sometimes. So I would rather we watch that stuff together and we're able to then have a conversation about it, rather, because I know he will see it, watch it, listen to it somewhere else where I've got no control and I can't have that conversation. So I mean, but a lot of parents take the view of they've got really stringent parental controls and they're not allowed to see anything. I mean, which do you think's wiser?
I think I will. So go on.
No, I was going to say, who are you asking? And then you started to speak. Go on.
I got in there anyway. You're busy. You crack on.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, there's a double edge to that as well, isn't there? Because there's the, you know, from a parent kind of aspect, it's, you know, to be able to control that in a certain way so you can have that conversation. It makes perfect sense, you know, to be open to that as well. There's not, you know, there's not every parent is that open about having those conversations as well. So that's a whole other conversation, I guess.
But if you've got nieces and nephews, Reece, would you, if their parents weren't able to have those conversations, would you be the like cool auntie that they could come to and talk to about it?
Yeah, for sure. Because I agree that I think it needs to be a conversation in some way, shape or form when it's appropriate, because it's not that, is it? That's not, you know, real life is not that porn. If someone turned up to fix my fridge with a very big wrench, I wouldn't expect, you know, what was coming next. It's like, it's not like that, and it's not as sexual as that. And actually, I feel like even older kids, you know, teenagers, I just think I am so glad that I grew up when I did. It looks like it's really fucking hard work these days. to keep up with all of this stuff, to keep up with the makeup, the trends, the TikToks, the everything.
Yeah.
On top of just existing, which is good enough as well. So
Definitely.
yeah, I'd like to be the cool on, but you never know.
I mean, I remember when my best friend Karen, when her eldest daughter was 14, she had a boyfriend, and so she started having sex. She's going to kill me if she ever watches this. She's telling the world, but she didn't. And I, I bought her a massive pack of condoms and gave her a talk and said, if you want me to take to the doctors to get you on the pill, I will do, and sent her home with them. And Karen rang me up in floods of tears. She was like, "What are you doing? She's 14." I was like, "Karen, you've got to be a big girl, put your big girl pants on, because she is having sex and you do not want her to get pregnant. We need to deal with this honestly." But she hadn't been able to talk to her mum about that and have that conversation, so she'd come to me, and I will always kind of I'll be that person for anybody, any teenager, the boy or girl that wants to have that conversation. I'll do it. But some parents genuinely do just want to put their head in the sand and put their hands over their ears and pretend it's not happening, don't they?
Well, you did it for me, Rachel, and I'm very grateful. She did it about 4 years before Mum did, so thanks. I think so I had an interesting conversation with Naya and my niece the other day. So I'd say my niece is 18 months younger than Naya, and I don't tend to censor things that Naya watches unless I find it over the top. Like I told her to turn something off the other day because someone was shouting he was going to fuck someone in the arse, so I told her to turn that off, but mainly because I didn't want to hear it myself. But and so Naya, will watch things on YouTube that have got swearing or whatever. And my niece was saying Naya shouldn't be allowed to watch that, and she wasn't allowed to watch that, and her mum didn't want her to watch that, and so Naya can't watch it and stuff. So I just said Naya, turn it off then, because I don't want to overrule how somebody else is choosing to bring up their kids. And perhaps if it was Leon, if it was my sibling's child, I would have overruled, I don't know. But because it's not my sibling's child, I thought, well, I'll respect the wishes of that parent.
Well, there was about 2 years ago when Naya came to stay with us, and I can't remember what we were watching, but it was a film, and the in-joke was that the boy had slept with the girl but didn't want it known about something. So it's like an in-joke that ran throughout the film. And Naya turned to me and she said, "What are they talking about?" And I said, "Sex. They're talking about sex because they've had sex. They don't want everybody to know about it." And she went, "Sex? Sex? What is this sex?" And I went, I thought she was joking. And then I was like, "Sex? What boys and girls do? Sex. They have it all the time." And then she obviously went home, and Hannah texted me, "What exactly have you been telling Naya about sex?"
I think she was about 4 at the time. 4.
But I assumed that because Leon was watching it, I'd assumed that she knew what we were talking about. So I just didn't, that was an opportunity to have a sensible conversation that I completely missed it. Oh, she was winding me up.
No, so things obviously come up, and especially with us having Aubrey now, how did you end up having Aubrey? Like, she knows about that, and I had to explain to her the other day what a condom was. I said it was like a glove for one finger. I just absolutely fucking bottled it. I had to explain to her what incest was as well, and I bottled that.
Wow. That's
bottled incest.
Wow.
Like I absolutely fuck it up. Someone else needs to have these conversations with Naya. She's gonna have no hope. But so I don't actively seek out these conversations and say, "Right, Naya, sit down today. I'm going to tell you about condoms." But if when they crop up, we have an open and honest and frank conversation about it without giggling, and then for the most part, and she does know a lot more than her peers and her friends and stuff. So. But I don't kind of confront her with it. And she's very kind of prim, I suppose. She's quite closeted herself. She doesn't, if there's people kissing on telly, she turns it off, doesn't like it, she's embarrassed by it and stuff. So maybe she's a bit naive herself, and maybe I'll get away with a bit longer.
I don't know. I mean, I have the same philosophy. Like, we don't sit down and purposefully have conversations. We talk about them when they occur. But again, that comes back to, that's why I would rather we watch this stuff and listen to it at home so that we can have those conversations, and it's not watching it at somebody else's house and then somebody else's mum is telling him what it is. You know, I feel like at least if I can control the conversation and teach him the right way the first time, I've got at least a little bit of what, no matter what he learns afterwards, at least he's had a reasonable discussion. Yeah, first.
How do you tackle, or what do you think about teaching body positivity to them? Because that is a massive thing that I'm conscious of, having never been taught body positivity myself. In fact, being given the absolute opposite. Yeah. I'm really keen that Naya, and I suppose Aubrey as well, have like a positive attitude towards themselves, well, not just their body also, but like their kind of abilities and intelligence and personalities and stuff. But you know, I never want them to think, oh, I'm not pretty enough, or that's really important, or I'm too fat, or I'm too thin, or my legs are too short, or whatever. Like it is important to me raising girls that they feel positive about themselves.
I think that's an even worse thing at the moment, because again, you know, the imagery and all the messages that they get from both, you know, media, social media, the telly, but also from their peers. You know, again, watching some of the TikTok videos that the girls in Leon's class make, you can tell it's a kind of preoccupation with them looking good, and like you said, Marisha, having the right, you know, the right makeup and the right eyebrows and the right everything. And I think it's absolutely huge. But I mean, I saw my friends at the weekend, and we were saying then, I don't remember ever, you know, I remember being concerned about, have I got the right clothes on, and have I got some makeup on before I go down the pub? But I was never as obsessed as girls seem to be now about how they look. But I do think it's trickling through to boys, and that message of you've got to be thin, and you've got to be fit, and you've got to be healthy, and you've got to be the right height and the right size, and all the rest of it is huge pressures on kids these days. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult thing, you know, because of that, I think it crosses both, and I think, you know, well, yeah, I can't really comment. I could guess, you know, that girls, yeah, there's definitely that whole pressure of looking right, sounding right, feeling right, being the right size, and actually the same for boys as well, and guys too. You know, but it's, I think that leads into, you know, being able to have open conversations about that, and acceptance about themselves, you know, and just being able to talk to someone, you know, because I think as girls it's typically expected and okay to chat about stuff, and if they're not happy or they're not feeling great, and you know, you put your slap on and off you go kind of thing. And you know, boys have a different kind of time with all of that stuff. So yeah, it's real difficult. I don't know how you do it, but I think there's a whole movement in general, you know, for body positivity, isn't there? You know,
yeah.
There is. So, but I do think this is where it gets really confusing, because I mean, if you just look through your social media feed, I was looking through mine earlier today, and it was actually in light of on Friday on our Friday Facebook Live, we were talking about women in search and kind of algorithmic bias. And if you put woman or girl into Google, it will give you images of beautiful, thin, young women, you know, 20-year-olds with either straight blonde or straight brown hair, very few black, brown, Asian faces, anything. And so we were talking about that, and I was looking through my Facebook feed, and my Facebook feed is this humongous contradiction of be positive, be who you want to be, you can do anything, you know, you can look anywhere, you can feel anywhere, you can be whatever gender you want to be, and then on the same side, but you have to look like this whilst you're doing it, but you have to have straight hair, but your hair has to be shiny, but you have to lose weight, here's an app that'll help you lose weight, here's an app
you have to have a giant arse and tiny waist. How? Tell me how. I have one or the other.
Your lips need to be bigger, your lips need to be smaller, your boobs need to be bigger, your boobs need to be smaller.
But not too big, because men don't like that. Be thin, but not too thin, because men don't like that. Oh, fuck off.
Yeah,
anyway,
but not too big, there's a limit. And this is
not the wrong sort of big.
Yeah. Yeah, dress trendy, but dress how you want. Wear something that's comfortable, but as long as it's the right thing. And it is just one person's Facebook feed has these contradictions. So if you can, again, imagine being a child, especially one who's coming into the teenage years now. You know, in the 90s, you never had this.
We did. Be thin, be heroin chic.
There was pressures. There was pressures to look certain ways, but I don't think we had that same bombardment. You know, you could look at it. You could buy Q magazine, or you could buy what's that one with the position of the fortnight. More, you could buy that, or you could not, and then you wouldn't see it. Whereas now it's everywhere, and it's in, you know, it comes into their bedrooms and they can't escape it. It's in the phones, it's on the PlayStation, it's on the telly. I think it's a lot more insidious than it ever was.
I think, like, for me, the biggest tool in combating it is to display body positivity myself. So I have a big thing, like a big rule in this house, that you don't say bad things about yourself. Hi, Liz. You don't say bad things about yourself, especially not out loud in an earshot of Naya. And if Naya says bad things about herself, I pull her up on it. And if Dave says bad things about himself, and if I do, you know, I say, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Whether it's, oh, I think I look fat in this, or, oh, I don't like my hair today, or, oh, I'm so stupid. Like, we just don't say bad things. And I always say to her, there's enough people who will say bad things about you. You need to have a positive internal monologue, like, so that you can counteract that. And I'm conscious that when I praise Naya, I tell her that she's beautiful all the time, but I kind of say, you know, why she's beautiful, and you know, you've got really nice hair, or you've got such lovely eyebrows, or your legs are lovely and long, or but I also tell her you're really courageous and you're really clever, and oh, you're so funny and you're so kind, and I kind of give her those compliments about things that are intrinsic to her, but also things that she can't really do very much about, rather than saying to her, you know, oh, you've got such lovely thin legs, or because her legs might get fat one day, that could change. But if I praise her for having long legs, she'll always have long legs. I don't know, like, maybe that sounds daft, but I try and praise her about the right things to give her confidence without hinging her self-confidence on her physicality. It's really tricky.
Yeah, it is tricky. And I always tell Leon and Naya that they're beautiful, and I tell them that they look really pretty today, or that, you know, they look nice in something. But again, I always tell them that I'm very proud of them, and that I think they're really clever. That was a really clever thing to talk about, or to mention, or to point out, or whatever. So it is finding that balance. You absolutely want to give them the self-belief that they're not ugly, but then again, you know, with their mothers, and I remember, like, people used to say to me, oh, aren't you a bonny girl and stuff, and you say, yeah, well, you have to say that though, because you're my granddad or you're my mum. So
they were only so saying they had to. You're a fucking dog, rough rage.
Yeah, well, exactly. This is the thing, isn't it? I mean, I do wonder most of the time, are we just wasting our breath? But then again, children need to hear it.
They do, but you got that. I got told constantly that I was fat, and that really stuck with me and really, like, damaged my self-esteem.
I mean, Nanny always told you were fat, didn't she? But Mum was just constantly putting you on a diet.
Yeah.
It's just a constant, Go on, Rach.
You know, I like, from my perspective, there wasn't really, you know, that kind of like massive need to be on a diet all the time in, you know, in the female line of my, you know, family, if you like. So, you know, okay, it came up every now and then, but I kind of ignored most of it. I think I thought it was puppy fat. I was told it's puppy fat and it will go. It still hasn't gone. It's like 20 years now.
It's still fine.
But, you know, when I look at, you know, I see other people and their entire lives revolve around losing weight. Every single element of their day is about losing weight. How could that not, you know, translate and rub off onto people that are around them, their kids, male and female, you know, or whatever, you know, there is influence there without it, you know, without even saying it. So even if you say, there's the, you know, do as I say, not as I do, it's that, isn't it? You know, but actually, it doesn't matter if you're on a constant diet and all you're worried about is losing weight all the time, and you only eat tiny meals that are made of, you know, cardboard. oh, but you're all right. It doesn't translate. You
So
know,
I'm going through this at the moment because obviously I had a baby. Hi, Dally. And here I am. I'm 80 right now. I'm carrying a lot more weight than I was doing, 10 months ago. And so I'm calorie counting and exercising, and Naya is seeing that. And so it's very difficult to, I know that I'm an unhealthy weight at the moment. I need to get that down. And so, but then I don't want her to think, dieting is the right thing to do and mum's on a diet. So I just say to her, like, oh, there's a lot of fat around my organs and my organs aren't going to perform as well because I'm an unhealthy weight and I need to get my weight down so that I can be healthy and things like that. So it's really difficult because being overweight can be really unhealthy and it is unhealthy. And I don't want her to think it's okay to be unhealthy. It's so difficult. It's so
it is a mindset. I mean, we are running out of time. We're going to have to finish, but we haven't even come on to jobs. We'll have to come back to jobs in a bit. But I do think just on the issue of weight, it was something that the older generations absolutely, if you'd put weight on, my nan would comment about it as soon as she saw you. And I remember even my dad, he's from Guyana, so he's not British, but when my cousin came round a couple of years ago and he hadn't seen her for a couple of years, and she walked in the kitchen and he went, Jesus, you've got fat, and it's just something that they did say it, and my nan would always comment on how much she weighed. And even now when Leon's like, oh, she's fat on the telly, we're always like, all right, Nanny. But it was a thing, and that has carried on down the generations, that obsession with what size people are. But anyway, we are way over time, I'm afraid. We've gone 1 minute over. We're gonna have to come back again. Maybe next week we could do it again.
But if anyone has the answer on how we can raise mentally healthy boys and girls, please, for the love of God,
please tell us. Yeah, we just want two sentence answer, please. What's the key? How do we do it? Because we're floundering. We're back next week.
We've asked more questions than we've answered.
We do that every week. Yes, we're back next week. Oh, I don't know. We'll find out then. Thank you to everybody who's watched.